That's the compromise that's already been made.
Well, Bernie Sanders is not backing down. In an interview on CNN, he held firm to the $3.5 trillion number in the budget bill. And as I'll get to later, AOC is trying to fill a major hole in benefits that was left open at the beginning of this month. But first, I want to show you this clip from Bernie on CNN discussing this budget bill.
How will the final figure be decided? I mean, where
it's going to be
$3.5
trillion. That's the compromise that's already been made. I think what we perceive right now, I mean, you should stick around me for a day. You hear all these folks coming up to me, oh, Bernie, I need to do more on childcare. We need to do more on pre-K. We need to do more on affordable housing. We need to do more. The truth is $3.5 trillion is not enough. And I will tell you this, that over the next 10 years, when you look at the gross domestic product of the United States, we're talking about close to $300 trillion over the next 10 years. This is $3.5 trillion, barely more than 1% of that. And furthermore, it is, if I have anything to say about it, this legislation, $3.5 trillion, will be paid for, will not add to the national debt, and it'll be paid for by finally demanding that the wealthiest people in this country, who in some years pay zero, they pay less than the average fireperson or teacher, pay zero in federal taxes. Large corporations pay nothing in federal taxes. We're going to change that. So it will be paid for.
So $3.5 trillion for you, that's there. It can't go lower than that.
No. And in fact, as you know, we compromised already. Most of the members of the caucus wanted $6 trillion, which is a more appropriate number.
So it's important this message gets spread, that this is discussed more often, especially in mainstream circles, that $3.5 trillion is the compromise. It was supposed to be over $6 trillion. Bernie compromised down to $3.5 trillion. And thankfully, he's holding firm to that figure. So the idea that it needs to be cut even further, I mean, there's no Medicare for all in this plan. There's no, free college for all in this plan. So there are obvious concessions here being made by progressives in the House, in the Senate. Yeah, when it comes to Joe Manchin, he thinks it's not enough of a compromise. He wants it even brought down even further to what Republicans want, because he is a Republican in disguise. So you have Joe Manchin just making, complete bullshit arguments. I've shown you again and again in several videos how he's claiming that $3.5 trillion is too much. Meanwhile, back in January, he was calling for up to $4 trillion in spending. But now all of a sudden, oh no, 3.5 can't do it. Because, of course, it affects his big donors. There's money here for climate change, which impacts the oil donors, the oil and gas donors that he has. Money for to expand healthcare coverage, which affects the health insurance donors he has. So it just, the amount of corruption and just overall garbage coming from Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema is just remarkable, that anybody even tries, in the press, they even try to make this a two-sided fight here. No. The facts, the numbers are with the entirety of the Democratic Party. It isn't just, Bernie and AOC pushing for this. It is Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden. This is their budget bill as well. Yet Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema are the ones that are obstructing it. So they're the ones obstructing the actual Democratic agenda. Meanwhile, Bernie and AOC are fighting to pass this budget bill. Now, a little more on just showing you how insignificant $3.5 trillion is in the grand scheme of things when given some context. This from Common Dreams. Citing a recent analysis from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, journalist David Moore wrote last week in Sludge that when accounting for revenue raised through tax hikes on wealthy individuals and corporations, and when spreading out spending over a decade, the annual net cost of the Build Back Better Act is estimated to be between $100 billion and $175 billion per year. Quote, less than the roughly $188 billion that the U.S. paid in 2020 to just 3 defense contractors, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Boeing. So this budget bill spends less money than what was paid to 3 defense contractors last year, showing you that, of course, Manchin and Sinema are not worried about debt. They're not. They don't. It's all just, how many times do we have to go over the same bullshit arguments before the media picks up or educates people on the fact that Joe Manchin's, the Kyrsten Sinemas, they are not there to serve people. They are there to serve corporate donors. Now, of course, they're not going to acknowledge that because CNN itself is a massive corporation, as is, NBC and the others. So they're always going to try and play this up as a two-sided fight. Oh, here you got the progressives, here you got the moderates, they call them. They're such bullshit. They're conservatives, moderates. But they're going to keep playing that up because it helps their ratings, and also they don't want to get to the heart of the matter, which is the influence of corporations on policy, because, again, they themselves are massive corporations. But a little more here. I want to show you what Bernie tweeted out, saying here in Washington, when we go to war, there's endless amounts of money, tax breaks for billionaires, endless amounts of money. But when we want to support working American families, suddenly we don't have enough money. Unacceptable. And going to the point I just showed you with the three defense contractors, he's exactly right. Now, before I get to the AOC part of this, which is also very important, just came out today, I just want to go over quickly here poverty. So showing you how the benefits that were given to people, again, benefits is the wrong term, but the help that was given to people during this pandemic, how it really did help them. So New York Times headline here, U.S. poverty fell last year as government aid made up for lost jobs. So first, looking at the graph here, there is the official poverty rate, which is 11.4%, but the official poverty rate doesn't include government programs such as food and housing assistance, tax credits, direct checks, whereas the supplemental poverty measure, which is 9.1%, as you see, went down. This includes, this factors in regional differences in housing costs, medical expenses, other costs, and of course factors in the government aid as well. So, and just to be clear, it's still, this figure is still out of whack. The poverty, the government defines poverty as an income level below $30,000 for a family of four. $30,000 for a family of four. One person can't live on 30 grand a year. So, no, even the basis here for any of this discussion is completely just the figures for poverty are ridiculous. They should be much higher. But here you have, still, using their definition, poverty rate still came down because of the benefits, the aid that was given to people during the pandemic. So more here from the New York Times. The fact that poverty did not rise more during an enormous economic disruption reflects the equally enormous response. Congress expanded unemployment benefits and food aid, doled out hundreds of billions of dollars to small businesses, and sent direct checks to most Americans. The Census Bureau estimated that direct checks alone lifted 11.7 million people out of poverty last year. Unemployment benefits and nutrition assistance prevented an additional 10.3 million people from falling into poverty, according to an analysis of the data by the New York Times. A White House economist, Jared Bernstein, said on Tuesday that the new poverty data should encourage lawmakers to enact the $3.5 trillion Democratic measure that includes much of Mr. Biden's economic agenda, which the administration argues will create more and better paying jobs. So you have here, maybe to the surprise of many, the White House calling to put this massive investment back into people, calling to pass the $3.5 trillion. So in the past, normally you'd have these two budget bills, one, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, then you have the budget bill that I've been discussing. You would have a typical White House, Democratic White House, and Democratic leadership would say, oh, budget bill, whatever, that big investment, we don't need that. Only the bipartisan infrastructure bill that helps corporations, we just want to pass that one. But here, this Democratic White House and leadership, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, are pushing to pass both. So that's progress. Now, again, it isn't enough, but we're seeing actual progress here. Now, of course, it has to get passed, but still, you're seeing them fight for it in a way that in the past, you never would have seen them fight for this. Now, let's get to last thing here to the AOC bit. So at the beginning of this month, unemployment benefits expire for millions without pushback from Biden. This happened on Labor Day. So unemployment benefits expired on Labor Day. And now you have AOC coming out, introducing a bill to extend the pandemic unemployment insurance. And just to read a little bit more from this here, Representative AOC will introduce a bill to extend all federal pandemic unemployment insurance through February 1st, 2022. If passed, benefits would be retroactive to September 6th. The bill text is available there. I'll link to that below the video. Quote, I've been very disappointed on both sides of the aisle that we've just allowed pandemic unemployment assistance to completely lapse when we are clearly not fully recovered from the cost effects of the pandemic, the Congresswoman said to it in a town hall Tuesday evening. Previewing the release of the bill, quote, I simply just cannot allow this to happen without at least trying. So there you go. Bernie Sanders, AOC, continuing to lead the fight to help actual people. Of course, there's still the usual barriers in place when it comes to people like Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema, and also, to be fair, Joe Biden not using his power enough to actually fight Joe Manchin and Sinema to support the passage of the budget bill. But still, those barriers are in place. But you're seeing the fight continue, and you have to admit there's some actual progress here when people like Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Biden continue to push the passage of the $3.5 trillion budget bill.